Hello, and welcome back to Nocturne Noir. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy chilling tales that drift through the Nocturne Noir, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1, Hey, he said, leaning against the bedroom doorway. Welcome home. At first, I did not recognize his face. I recognized the hoodie. It was old, torn at the sleeves, and stained by years of careless use. The dark fabric had faded almost gray, but the white lettering across the chest could still be read. Class of '09. Hi, I said, slowly sitting up in bed. Somewhere deep inside my mind, fear began to move. It was distant, like thunder behind mountains. I could feel that something was wrong, but the realization had not fully reached me yet. It's been a while, Stefan said. He stepped into the room. The apartment building was old. Every movement I had made since arriving caused the wooden floor to creak, yet Stefan's foot made no sound. What brings you back to Poprad? He asked. Visiting family? A funeral. Oh, he took another silent step. The room suddenly became colder. Who died? I opened my mouth, but no answer came out. I had spent most of the day traveling from Prague. I was tired, stressed, and still half asleep. My mind struggled to understand what was standing in front of me. Stefan watched my confusion for a few seconds. Then he burst into laughter. I'm messing with you, cousin, he said. I appreciate you coming. Just wish it was under better circumstances. He stepped into the moonlight coming through the window. That was when I finally saw him clearly. His eyes were deep and sunken. His nose was still crooked from a fight he had gotten into when we were teenagers. His skin looked pale and sick, almost gray. Time had not treated him kindly. Neither had death. Stefan had been dead for 3 days. The funeral was tomorrow. He wore the same sweatpants and old-school hoodie that I remembered him wearing during the last years of his life. I wondered if he had chosen those clothes or if death had chosen them for him. An Airbnb? He said, looking around the room. Nice place. Is there a no-smoking rule? He pulled a crushed pack of Starkey cigarettes from his pocket. Does it matter? I asked. Stefan smiled. Several of his teeth were missing. The ones that remained were yellow, dark at the gums, and broken around the edges. He lit a cigarette and offered me one. I quit, I said. About 5 years ago. Good for you. I tried quitting a couple of times. Never lasted more than a day. He breathed out. The cloud of smoke was far thicker than it should have been. It spread between us, almost hiding his damaged smile. You know me, he continued, addictive personality and all. How are you? I asked. The question sounded foolish the moment I said it. Stefan's smile disappeared. Dead, for one short moment, his expression became completely empty. He looked exactly the way a dead man should look. Then the grin returned. But heaven's nice, he said. Peaceful, bright, little babies with wings playing harps and all that nonsense. Oh, white steam left my mouth when I breathed. I'm sorry. Don't be. I went out on a high note. He laughed at his own joke, a very high note. Stefan walked past the bed and stood beside the window. He smelled of old sweat, cigarette smoke, and burnt plastic. He looked down at the quiet street. Poprad appeared almost unchanged since our childhood. The same aging apartment building stood beneath the mountains. The The same yellow streetlights reflected off the wet road. Even the silence felt familiar. Stefan smoked for a while. Then, as casually as if he were asking about the weather, he said, "Is Anna coming?" "Yeah, her flight arrives tomorrow." "Is she married?" "I don't think so." He did not respond. He tapped the ash from his cigarette onto the windowsill. Anna and Stefan had dated during the final years of high school. Their relationship had been loud, passionate, and painful. They broke up shortly after graduation when Anna moved to the United Kingdom. Stefan never completely accepted it. "And what about you?" he asked, turning away from the window. "Wife? Children?" "Sorry I haven't kept up. Been busy. No wife. No kids. I was seeing someone for a few years, but it ended." Stefan was not listening. He picked up my pants from the chair and removed my wallet. "Hey." He opened it and began looking through my cards. "Organ donor," he said. "Nice." I watched him examine my health insurance card, driver's license, and old loyalty cards. The last pieces of sleep finally left me. The fear remained, but it had changed. Stefan was dead. Whatever stood in the room might have been frightening, but part of me still believed he could not truly harm me. "Could I borrow 20 euros? He asked. "What for?" His brow tightened. That single movement made him look much older than 34. "Heaven is nice," he said. "Real nice. Babies with harps, endless light, all of that. I could still use some cash. What do you need money for?" "Does it matter?" I looked at him. "I guess not." Stefan removed a blue 20 euro note from my wallet. Then he returned the wallet to my pants. "Thanks, Sam." He walked toward the doorway. "I'll see you soon." Before I could answer, I woke up. Morning light filled the bedroom. The sky outside was gray and overcast. The cold was gone. So was the smell of burnt plastic. For several minutes, I lay there and told myself it had only been a dream. Then I reached for my wallet. The 20 euro note was missing. I met Anna at the airport later that afternoon. When she walked through the arrivals gate, we recognized each other immediately. She looked older, of course, but not in a bad way. Her hair was shorter, and there were small lines around her eyes. Her nose still wrinkled whenever she smiled. We hugged. For a little while, the meeting felt almost happy. There's a strange excitement in seeing someone after many years. You search their face for the person you remember. You compare the teenager in your memory to the adult standing in front of you. For a few minutes, the reason we had both returned to Poprid stayed in the background. Then we walked toward the taxi stand. The funeral returned to us. By the time we reached the car, Anna had become quiet. She sat beside me in the back seat. Tears gathered in her eyes before the taxi had even left the airport. "I dreamed about him on the plane," she said. I looked at her. I haven't slept properly since his mother called. But the moment I closed my eyes during the flight, Stefan was there. What was he doing? Smoking, I thought about telling her about my dream. I thought about the missing 20 euros. Instead, I reached across the space between us and rubbed her back. She began crying harder. The taxi driver slowly increased the volume of the radio, pretending not to hear. Stefan's family invited us to lunch that afternoon. We did not go. Anna said she needed fresh air after the flight. I had my own reasons for avoiding a room full of relatives, asking questions about my work, relationships, and why I rarely returned home. After leaving our bags at the Airbnb, we walked to the small park near the train station. We used to spend time there after school. The place had never been beautiful. Even when we were teenagers, the benches were damaged and the grass was thin. Now several homeless men slept beneath the trees, and empty bottles gathered near the paths. Still, walking through it felt like entering an old photograph. Anna and I talked about the last 10 years. She told me about her work in the UK and the apartment she rented outside London. I told her about Prague, my job, and the relationship that had ended the previous winter. We had both aged. Anna had done it more gracefully. Her laugh was exactly the same. We sat on a bench beneath a tree and began talking about our high school prom. We remembered getting far too drunk. We remembered breaking into the local water park after midnight. We remembered how Anna's neighbor almost fell asleep in the shallow pool and how Stefan had dragged him out by his shirt. We would die if we drank like that now, I said. We almost died then. We laughed. After a long silence, Anna touched the wooden bench. Do you remember this one? I don't think so. Our first cigarette. The memory returned immediately. We had been 12 or 13. It was summer. The three of us had sat on that same bench, passing around a blue L&M cigarette that Stefan had stolen from his mother. The nicotine made me dizzy enough that I nearly fell over. Oh God, I said. For a second, the gray afternoon became bright and warm. I felt shorter, younger, alive in a way I had not felt for years. Anna pulled a pack of cigarettes from her pocket. You smoke again? I asked. I stopped when I moved to Britain. Started again on Saturday. The packaging looked different from the cigarettes we remembered, but the letters still read L&M. I considered telling her that I had quit. Instead, I accepted one. It felt like pouring a drink onto a grave that was not yet filled. The cigarette tasted awful. It also tasted exactly as I remembered. Sam, Anna said after a while, I don't want to see her tomorrow. Aunt Viera? Anna blew smoke from her lungs and nodded. She kept calling after I moved. She would tell me Stefan missed me and ask when I was coming home. I told her again and again that we had broken up. She still called at least once every year. She's difficult, I said. That was a gentle way of describing Aunt Viera. When I visited Stefan's mother later that evening, her apartment was already full of family. Fortunately, most of them were drunk enough to tolerate. Aunt Viera met me in the hallway. She smelled of wine and heavy perfume. She grabbed my face between her hands and told me how much I had grown. I was in my 30s. She then complained that I never visited and had forgotten where I came from. Her apartment felt much smaller than it had when I was a child. Every shelf was crowded with decorations, photographs, religious statues, and cheap souvenirs. Aunt Viera had barely changed. Her fingers were still covered in large, colorful rings. Her voice remained sharp and nasal. Age had not reduced her endless nervous energy. My hairline had moved several inches since high school. Time seemed to have ignored her completely. She immediately asked about Anna. When I said Anna was sleeping at the Airbnb after her flight, Aunt Viera complained that the British had stolen her manners. Then, her voice shook. Maybe Stefan would still be alive if she had not left. I wanted to tell her that was cruel and unfair. Anna had not placed the drugs in Stefan's hand. She had not forced him to spend years destroying himself. But Aunt Viera's eyes were wet and unfocused. Nothing I said would change her. I hugged her instead. Then I allowed her to pour me a glass of wine. When I returned to the Airbnb, I was drunk. Anna was asleep in the only bed. There was a couch in the living room, but nowhere else to lie down. We had arranged the trip so quickly that we never discussed where each of us would sleep. For a moment, I considered climbing into bed beside her. Then I decided I did not trust myself, the alcohol, or the sadness surrounding us. I carefully removed one blanket from the bed, took a pillow, and went to the couch. I was almost asleep when a cold shiver passed over my arms. The temperature dropped. "How was she?" Stefan asked. I heard him place his feet on the coffee table. "Your mother?" "Yeah." I took a deep breath. The air smelled rotten. "All things considered, she's surviving." "Drunk?" "A little. Everyone was." I sat up and opened my eyes. Stefan looked worse than he had the previous night. His skin had turned yellow-gray. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. His voice sounded strained, and the corner of one eye twitched in a way I remembered from the worst months of his addiction. When he noticed me staring, he stood. "It would be pretty funny if they held a sober funeral for me," he said. He moved toward the bookshelf. His steps were still silent, but his body jerked strangely as he walked, as if his muscles were fighting each other. He picked up a small statue. It showed a traditional Goral shepherd wearing a wide hat and holding an axe. The metal looked like bronze, though it was probably something cheaper. "Think this is worth anything?" Stefan asked. He ran one shaking finger along the shepherd's hat. "No idea." He touched the blade of the tiny axe, pressing his skin against it. "How's heaven?" I asked. Stefan continued studying the statue. "It's nice. Still peaceful?" "Very peaceful." He placed the statue back on the shelf with great care. Then he lit a cigarette. He kept his back toward me. "It's just expensive," he said. "Expensive?" "Yeah, what are you buying?" He breathed out smoke and white steam. "Food." "What kind of food?" "Heaven food." He turned toward the bedroom. "Why aren't you sleeping in there?" "Anna is in the bed." "So?" He smiled. There was genuine humor in his eyes, but I could only look at his mouth. More teeth were missing. The remaining ones looked softer, as if they were beginning to rot inside his skull. "We broke up years ago," he said. "Don't let me stand in the way." When I woke, the room was warm. Anna was still sleeping. The statue of the Goral shepherd was gone. I searched the bookshelf and the nearby floor. There was no sign of it. I had not noticed the statue before Stefan picked it up. For a while, I wondered whether it had ever existed. Over coffee, I asked Anna about it. Was there a small metal shepherd on the shelf? She looked toward the empty space. "I don't know. I didn't notice." Her thoughts were somewhere else. I let the subject go. We had a funeral to attend. Before the ceremony, the closest family members were allowed to view Stefan's body. I stood near the back of the room and watched Aunt Viera approach the coffin. Her grief was loud and ugly. She placed both hands on Stefan's chest and cried his name until two relatives gently pulled her away. When she passed me, I noticed something strange. Her fingers were bare. Aunt Viera always wore rings. Even while cooking or cleaning, she wore at least 3 or 4 on each hand. Now, every one of them was gone. Stefan looked peaceful inside the coffin. That meant he looked nothing like the man I remembered. He wore a dark suit that he would have hated. His skin had been covered with makeup to make him appear healthy. His hair was clean and carefully combed. There was a faint smile on his face. Near the edge of his lips, I saw a small line of thread. The funeral workers had sewn his mouth closed. I wondered whether his teeth were still inside his head. "Goodbye, Stefan," I whispered. I was almost certain he could not hear me. Almost, Although Stefan died in his 30s, every speech focused on the boy he had once been. People talked about his birth, childhood, school years, and the trouble he caused as a teenager. Nobody mentioned the final years. Nobody spoke about the drugs. Nobody spoke about the stealing, begging, lying, or disappearing. Anyone who had seen Stefan during the past 5 years had known how his life would probably end. We simply did not know the exact day. The priest spoke next. He said Stefan's physical body was gone, but parts of him remained alive. In our memories, in our hearts, in the great mystery beyond death. As the priest continued, I found myself wondering which parts of Stefan had survived. His humor, his charm, his hunger. After the church service, I stood with the family and shook hands with relatives I barely remembered. Most of them probably did not remember me either. Then, Stefan's former classmates began appearing. Old friends, enemies, and people who had once shared classrooms with us stood in line. They had wrinkles, gray hair, large stomachs, and tired eyes. Time had changed all of them. Anna was one of the last people to approach. Aunt Vieira pulled her into a powerful hug. Neither woman looked comfortable. When Anna reached me, we shook hands without speaking. Before Stefan's coffin was lowered into the ground, we slipped behind the church and smoked. The funeral meal, or kur, was held at a restaurant near the cemetery. There was plenty of food, but nobody seemed hungry. Most guests moved toward the alcohol. The first few drinks were quiet and respectful. People raised glasses and offered careful memories. As the alcohol continued flowing, the speeches became more honest. Eventually, the members of the class of '09 gathered away from the family. Anna and I stayed near Aunt Vieira for a while, but after hearing the same childhood stories several times, we joined our former classmates. They welcomed us warmly enough. Still, there was tension beneath the friendliness. Anna had left for the UK. I had moved to Prague. Several people joked that we were too successful for Poprad now. They asked whether life in the big cities had made us forget how to speak to ordinary people. The comments were meant to sound playful, but there was bitterness behind them. Even so, it was good to see familiar faces. When the funeral meal began to end, those without children moved to a pub we had visited as teenagers. About 12 of us went. Robert, who everyone called Robo, had barely changed. In high school, he smelled of old sweat and drank until he lost control. Now he wore a suit and had gray hair, but he still smelled the same and still could not handle alcohol. The bastard borrowed tools from me and never returned them, Robo said. No one was surprised. I'm over it, of course. We shouldn't speak badly about the dead. He took a long drink. Then he said something that made the table quiet. But I've been having dreams. Robo shifted in his seat. Every night since Stefan died, he appears beside my bed, tells me what a good friend I was, says we should forget the past and all that. And then he asks for money, Anna said. Robo pointed at her. Exactly. The eternal beggar. Still charming, even after death. He laughed and raised his glass. If he were here, I'd buy him a drink. To Stefan. A few people lifted their glasses slowly. Robo was too drunk to notice the mood. He did not understand that he was not the only one dreaming about Stefan. I looked around the table. Several people avoided my eyes. One woman tightened her hand around her purse. An old classmate named Marek quietly checked his wallet. Anna looked at me. Neither of us said anything. Do you think the priest was right? She asked later. We were walking through Poprad's quiet streets toward the Airbnb. About what? About part of us staying behind after death. Maybe. I took a drag from another cigarette. I had promised myself I would not smoke. The real question is, which part stays? We stopped at a small shop and bought a bottle of cheap wine. We planned to drink it at the apartment, but the night was warm, and both of us wanted to spend more time in the town where we had grown up. We returned to the park near the train station. The homeless men sleeping there seemed more threatening after dark, but we still sat on the same bench. I had my first kiss here, Anna said. She drank directly from the bottle. With Stefan? I did not like the nervous change in my own voice. Yeah, I kicked at the stones beneath my shoes. Only 2 people sat on the bench, but I suddenly felt like someone else was between us. The feeling was strangely familiar. A cold gust moved through the trees. Anna and I shifted closer together. "Do you miss this place?" she asked. "Poprad?" I thought about it. Prague is different. There's more to do, more opportunities, but the air is better here. It's quieter. I drank from the bottle. The wine burned my throat. I missed some of the people. Another cold wind passed over us. We moved even closer. "What about you?" I asked. "Do you miss it?" Anna did not answer. She looked directly into my eyes. The streetlight reflected inside hers. Neither of us moved. "Cousin, I have to say, I'm disappointed." Stefan leaned against the bedroom doorway. He looked relaxed at first, but his fingers were digging into the wooden frame. There was something terribly wrong with him now, something beyond the fact that he was dead. "Successful, smart, charming, beautiful," he said. "I was never good enough for her. I was a mistake." He stepped into the room without making a sound. "But you, cousin, you are different. The successful man from Prague." Anna had refused to let me sleep on the couch again. She said either I shared the bed with her or she would take the couch herself. Now we lay beneath the same blanket, but a wide, empty space separated us. I sat up carefully, trying not to wake her. "What are you doing here?" I whispered. "Questioning your decisions." Stefan reached for my pants on the floor. "She's right beside you. She likes you. She always did. I can leave if you want." His broken smile widened. "Unless you want me to watch." "What are you doing with my wallet?" The smile disappeared. Stefan looked at me with bloodshot eyes. The twitch in his face had become worse. His lips were cracked, and he kept chewing them until dark fluid appeared around his teeth. "You don't sleep when you're dead," he said. "You never sleep. Put down my wallet." He held it tightly in his thin fingers. "The food is expensive here, cousin. Put it down." For a moment, I thought he might attack me. The room became colder. Stefan stared at me with such anger that his face almost stopped looking human. Then he released the wallet. It fell onto the floor. "You would think dying makes things easier," he said. His voice was deep and exhausted. "It doesn't." When I woke, Anna was still sleeping. Her purse was in the living room. I was certain she had brought it into the bedroom the night before. The purse was open. Its contents had been disturbed. Makeup, receipts, and cards were spread across the floor as if someone had searched through everything. I checked my wallet. It lay exactly where Stefan had dropped it. A sick smell surrounded it. I noticed thin scratches across the leather. They were small and close together, almost like marks left by fingernails. I removed my cards and identification one by one. Then I carried the wallet into the kitchen and dropped it into the trash. The smell and scratches frightened me. But what frightened me most was the missing money. Every banknote was gone. I searched the bedroom. I searched the floor, the couch, and the pockets of my clothes. There had been almost 200 euros in the wallet the night before. Now there was nothing. Anna woke while I was checking beneath the couch. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Did you take any money from my wallet?" She stared at me. "No. What about your purse?" Her expression changed. She hurried into the living room and knelt beside it. Her cash was gone, too. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Anna reached into one of the small pockets and removed a folded piece of paper. The paper was old and stained. Across it, someone had written 3 words in uneven handwriting. "Thanks for dinner." Anna dropped the note. The apartment became cold. A cigarette smell entered the room. From somewhere near the bedroom doorway, Stefan began to laugh. Story 2. Music has been an important part of my life for as long as I can remember. I would never call myself a talented musician, but I learned to play the piano when I was young, and I have always loved listening to different kinds of music. Classical, jazz, folk, electronic, old rock songs, film scores. It never really mattered. If something had a strong melody, I wanted to understand it. Strangely enough, music was also one of the reasons I became interested in biology. When I was a child, my grandfather often took me bird watching. We lived in Germany, and we explored the forests near my hometown. Many of those forests had been planted by people after older woodland had been destroyed. They were not wild in the same way as the huge forests of North America. But to me, as a child, they felt endless. My grandfather and I would leave early in the morning with binoculars, notebooks, food, and a large metal flask of coffee that I was not allowed to drink. We spent hours walking beneath the trees, stopping every few minutes to listen. He always told me that bird watching was 90% hearing and only 10% watching. Anyone who has spent time in a forest knows that he was right. Most of the time, you do not see the birds. They hide high in the branches or deep inside thick bushes. You hear them first, a call from somewhere above you, a repeated whistle across a field, a short burst of music from a tree you cannot even identify. My knowledge of melodies made their songs fascinating to me. I could hear patterns inside them. Some birds repeated simple phrases. Others changed the speed, rhythm, and pitch every few seconds. Certain species copied other birds. Some even copied machines, car alarms, and human voices. The more I learned, the more amazed I became. Birdsong is not random noise. It has rules. It has meaning. It tells other birds about danger, territory, food, and possible partners. It can also change depending on where the bird lives. 2 birds of the same species can sing differently if they grow up in different places. To me, that felt close to human music. That childhood fascination eventually became my career. Many years have passed since those walks with my grandfather. I recently completed my PhD in behavioral biology at a university here in Germany. I now work there as a lecturer. I teach students about animal communication, learning, group behavior, and evolution. It is a good job. I worked very hard to earn it, and until recently I believed I had built a respectable future for myself. After what has happened, I am no longer sure how long my colleagues will continue to take me seriously. A few weeks ago, I moved into a house at the edge of town. The place is beautiful. Fields surround most of the property, and a forest begins almost directly behind the garden. If you have visited northern Germany, You probably know that we do not have many large natural forests left. There are wooded areas, of course, but most are divided by roads, farms, towns, and walking paths. The forest behind my house is unusual. It is not enormous, especially compared to the wilderness found in places like the United States or Canada, but it is large enough for long walks. Some sections feel old and untouched. There are places where the trees grow so close together that sunlight barely reaches the ground. The forest is said to be one of the few remaining parts connected to what people once called the Great Teutoburger Wald. Long ago, forests covered far more of Europe than they do today. It is difficult to imagine now when cities and farmland cover so much of the land. But there was once a time when a person could travel for days beneath trees. The forest was the main reason I chose the house. There were newer homes closer to town. Some had better heating systems, modern kitchens, and lower maintenance costs. But none stood so close to the woods. The first time I visited, I parked my car farther down the road so I could look at the property from a distance. The tree line began at the far edge of the garden. Behind it, dark branches rose like a wall. The house itself was tall and made from old red brick. It had a narrow roof, several chimneys, and an oval window at the very top. From the road, the building seemed to lean over the forest like a castle from an old horror film. I thought it looked wonderful. While standing there, I saw the shape of an elderly woman in the oval window. She was looking toward the trees. I could not see her face clearly, only her thin outline against the glass. The house belonged to the grandmother of a friend of mine. He had mentioned that she planned to move into a nursing home. It's a really nice place, he told me. It's just too large for her now. After I said I might be interested, he gave me her phone number. I called her the next day, and we arranged a time for me to visit. She welcomed me warmly when I arrived. She was very old and walked with a wooden stick. Her back was bent, and her hands shook slightly. She suffered from dementia, and within the first few minutes, it became clear why her family wanted her to move somewhere she could receive help. Still, she was friendly. "I'll make coffee," she said, smiling. "There is apple cake in the refrigerator." I thanked her, but politely refused. I told her I had already eaten. She ignored me. "Nonsense, everyone likes apple cake." She turned and slowly disappeared around the corner toward the kitchen. I waited in the hallway. Several minutes passed. I heard no cupboards opening, no plates moving, and no coffee machine. "Hello?" I called. There was no answer. I waited a little longer, then called again. Silence. I knew she was confused and probably had forgotten why she went into the kitchen. I began to worry that she might have fallen. I walked farther into the house. The place was much larger inside than it appeared from the road. There were high ceilings, dark wooden floors, and many narrow rooms connected by long hallways. Old furniture filled most of the space. Some of it looked valuable, while other pieces were covered in dust. I called for the woman as I searched. Every room was empty. It took me nearly 20 minutes to explore the ground floor and the rooms upstairs. The house seemed to have been expanded several times over the years, creating strange corners and doors in unexpected places. Eventually, I reached the final door at the top of the house. It led to the room with the oval window. Before I opened it, I heard laughter on the other side. It was quiet and soft. At first, I thought the woman might be speaking to someone. Then I realized the laughter came from only one voice. I knocked. The laughter stopped immediately. "Are you in there?" I asked. No response. I waited for a few seconds, then slowly pushed the door open. The old woman was standing in front of the oval window. She had her back to me and was staring out at the forest. The room was almost empty. There was one chair, a small table, and several boxes near the wall. The air smelled old and dry. "Are you all right?" I asked. She turned slowly. For a moment, she looked frightened. It was clear that she did not recognize me. I had to explain again who I was and why I had entered her house. I mentioned my friend, her grandson. I told her that I was interested in buying the property. After a while, she seemed to remember. She smiled and asked whether I wanted coffee. I told her that she had already offered. "Did I?" she asked. I nodded. To calm her, I began talking about myself. I explained that I had recently started working at the university. I told her that I studied animal behavior and that I enjoyed nature. When I mentioned bird watching, her expression changed. She looked toward the window. "The birds here are beautiful," she said. I agreed. She continued staring at the trees. Then she smiled again, but this smile seemed different from the friendly expression she had shown downstairs. "They sing when they want something," she whispered. I asked what she meant. She turned back toward me. "Would you like some apple cake?" A week later, she moved into a care facility. The sale went quickly because her family wanted the house dealt with as soon as possible. I moved in not long after. Most of the furniture remained. I planned to replace it slowly, but at first I only brought the things I needed. The most important thing I brought was my pet bio. Pippin bios are sometimes called hill minus. They are black birds with bright orange-yellow skin near their heads. Like parrots, they are excellent at copying sounds. Some can repeat human speech with amazing accuracy. Pippin had lived with me for years. He could copy my phone ringtone, the microwave, the front door, and several words that I regretted teaching him. He adjusted to the new house quickly. Once I had unpacked enough to feel comfortable, I began exploring the forest. One evening, I went out shortly before sunset. Spring had arrived, but the air was unusually cold. The last light passed between the trees in thin golden lines. The ground was soft from recent rain, and small drops of water still clung to the leaves. I heard chaffinches, wrens, blackbirds, and robins. I've always loved the song of the European robin. It has a soft, sad quality, almost metallic in places. It often sounds lonely, even when other birds are nearby. I followed a narrow trail deeper into the forest. After about an hour, I reached a small clearing. That was where I heard it. At first, the sound came from somewhere far ahead. The song began simply. There were only a few notes, spaced far apart. It sounded closer to a call than a true song. I stopped walking. The melody repeated. Then, it changed. More notes joined it. The rhythm became more complex. The song rose, fell, and twisted through patterns I had never heard before. I wish I could describe it properly. I cannot. Any words I use will make it sound ordinary. It was the most beautiful song I had ever heard. It contained sadness, joy, fear, and something else I could not name. It sounded ancient, but also completely new. At moments, it reminded me of a human voice. Then it changed into something too complicated for any person to sing. I stood in the clearing and listened. I forgot about the cold. I forgot about the fading light. I forgot why I had entered the forest. The song seemed to move through me. It felt as though each note was connected to a memory I had never experienced. I do not know how long I remained there. When the sound stopped, I looked around. The forest was completely dark. I checked my phone. It was after midnight. I had been standing in that clearing for several hours. I felt confused and frightened. My legs were stiff from the cold, and my hands were numb. The forest was silent, not quiet. Silent, I could not hear insects, branches, or distant animals. Even the wind had stopped. I hurried home using the light from my phone. That night, I barely slept. Germany has roughly between 250 and 300 regularly recorded bird species, depending on how they are counted. I know the songs of all the common species and many of the rare ones. The region where I live contains a large number of them. The song I heard belonged to none of them. I considered several explanations. Perhaps it was an escaped exotic bird. Maybe someone had released a pet into the forest. It could have been an unusual recording played from a hidden speaker. But none of those explanations felt right. By morning, another thought had taken hold. I had discovered a new species. Scientifically, that seemed nearly impossible. Germany is not an unexplored country. Its wildlife has been studied for centuries. A new songbird large enough to produce such a powerful melody should have been noticed. Still, the song had been real. For the next several days, I returned to the forest at the same time. I waited in the clearing until darkness fell. I heard nothing unusual. I did not tell my colleagues. I knew how the story would sound. A new lecturer claiming to have discovered an unknown bird behind his own house would not be taken seriously without evidence. I needed a recording. Every evening I carried my phone, a microphone, and my binoculars. Every evening I returned with nothing. Then I had the dream. In the dream, I was lying in bed with the window open. The song began deep in the forest. It moved closer, passing between the trees and across the garden. It entered through my window like wind and settled inside the room. It was exactly the same melody. Beautiful and possible, but there was something hidden inside it this time. The song was calling my name. It did not use words in a normal voice. The notes themselves formed my name. The melody repeated it again and again. Each time, it sounded closer. I woke suddenly. My bedroom was dark. For several seconds, I believed the song was still playing. Then I realized the house was silent. I sat up and listened. A door creaked somewhere downstairs. My first thought was that someone had entered the house. I got out of bed. The moon was full, and silver light filled the hallway. The old floors creaked beneath my feet as I moved toward the stairs. I did not turn on the lights. I wanted to hear anyone moving below. The kitchen door was open. So was the kitchen window. I was almost certain I had closed both before going to bed. Cold air entered through the window, carrying the smell of wet earth and trees. I searched the ground floor carefully. Nothing seemed stolen. There were no footprints, broken locks, or signs of an intruder. Then I reached the living room. The door was closed. Something was making noise on the other side. The song. The same bird song. A shiver moved through my entire body, but it did not sound as beautiful as it had in the forest. It sounded damaged. The notes were stretched and twisted. Parts repeated too quickly. Others ended suddenly. It reminded me of a digital audio file that had been copied and compressed too many times. It was the same melody, but wrong. I placed my hand on the door handle. Every sensible part of me said I should leave the house. My curiosity was stronger. I opened the door slowly. The song became louder. The distortion was painful now. Certain notes scraped against my ears. Then it stopped. Pippin was sitting inside his cage near the window. He tilted his head and looked at me. Relief came first. Bios copy sounds. That was what he was doing. Then I realized the problem. How did Pippin know the song? He had never been in the forest. The living room windows had been closed every evening. The song had only played once, far from the house. I moved closer to the cage. "Pippin," I whispered. He stared at me. Then, in a perfect copy of my own voice, he said my name. After that night, I decided to use the Merlin Bird ID application. It can identify many birds by their songs. If the creature in the forest was an escaped pet or a rare visitor, the application might recognize it. I went into the woods every day. The strange song never returned. Soon I noticed something worse. No other birds were singing either. The forest had become completely silent. At first, I thought the weather was responsible. Birds sometimes become quieter because of temperature, rain, predators, or time of day. But the silence continued. Morning, afternoon, evening, it made no difference. I walked for hours without hearing a single call. No robins, no wrens, no chaffinches, no crows. Even birds commonly found near roads and farms had disappeared. I searched the ground for feathers or dead animals. I found nothing. It was as if every bird had left at the same time. Pippin continued to repeat pieces of the unknown melody. He never sang the entire song, only short, damaged parts. Sometimes he did it during the day. More often, he did it after midnight. I recorded every example and played them through the Merlin application. It could not identify the species. Eventually, I showed the recordings to some of my colleagues. At first, they laughed. They thought I had created the sound using editing software. One professor said it sounded like a badly damaged recording of several species mixed together. I explained where I had heard it. Their amusement faded into discomfort. One of them suggested I take time away from work. Another asked whether I had been sleeping properly. Since then, I have stopped mentioning it. The forest remained silent. Not one bird has returned. I still give lectures at the university. Recently, I began opening my ornithology lessons with the same question. What is the oldest song? Students usually answer with examples from human history. Some mention the Hurrian hymn, an ancient piece of music discovered at Ugarit and written thousands of years ago. I tell them that they are wrong. The oldest music is far older than human civilization. Songbirds have existed for millions of years. Their songs changed with the world around them. Each generation learned, copied, changed, and passed those melodies forward. Bird song is alive. It evolves. It stores information. It carries warnings, memories, and instructions that we may never fully understand. I tell my students that humans did not invent music. We only learned to copy it. I used to say those words because they sounded poetic. Now I believe them in a way that frightens me. I do not know what lives in the forest behind my house. I do not know what produced that song or why it held me in the clearing until after midnight. I do not know why every bird in the forest disappeared. Most of all, I do not know what entered my house and taught the melody to Pippin. Last night, I woke at 3:12 in the morning. Pippin was singing downstairs. For the first time, the song was not distorted. It was perfect. I stood at the top of the stairs and listened. The same beauty filled the house, the same impossible notes, the same feeling that I was remembering something from before I was born. Then, Pippin stopped. A second voice continued the melody from outside. It came from the forest. Pippin answered. The voice outside moved closer. Pippin sang again. They repeated the same notes back and forth, like two birds calling to one another. Except the voice from the woods was not a bird. Between the notes, I heard breathing. Slow, deep, human breathing. Then the song changed. It began calling my name. I did not go downstairs. I locked my bedroom door and remained there until morning. When I finally entered the living room, Pippin's cage was open. The window beside it was open too. Pippin was gone. There were no feathers in the room, no signs of struggle, only a line of small muddy marks leading from the cage to the window. Beside them were much larger marks. They looked almost like bare human footprints, except the toes pointed backward. I have not entered the forest since. At night, I sometimes hear Pippin singing beyond the tree line. His voice moves through the darkness, repeating pieces of the melody. Each night, it comes a little closer to the house. There is a terrifying thought that I now share with my students, though I hide it inside the language of science. All around the world, people hear sounds every day without really listening. They hear animals, machines, voices, and music, and they assume they understand the source. Most of the time, they are probably right. But sometimes, a person hears something that does not belong. A call from an empty forest. A melody from a bird that does not exist. A familiar voice coming from somewhere it should not be. And because the sound is beautiful, or ordinary, or close enough to something they already know, they think nothing of it. That is what frightens me most. Not that something unknown is singing in the woods behind my house, but that it may have always been singing, and we have been listening to it for millions of years. Story 3. I am writing this from the bathroom on the second floor. It is the only place in the house where I can still get a mobile internet signal. It is also the only room without a camera. At least, I hope it is. If anyone is reading this, please call the police and send them to 42 Oak Ridge. Do not try to call me first. My phone still connects to the internet. But every emergency call I make is blocked before it can connect. I have tried the police, the fire department, and several friends. The result is always the same. The call begins, there is a short burst of static, and then the screen shows a message. Call canceled by home security system. I did not give the house permission to control my phone. I did not give it permission to do any of this. Everything started 3 days ago, when I had a new smart home system installed. The system was called Omni. According to the company, it was the most advanced home assistant available to the public. It was supposed to control nearly everything in the house. The lights, heating, air conditioning, doors, windows, security cameras, kitchen appliances, television, music, and grocery deliveries could all be managed through a single voice command. The salesman described it as a second brain for the home. It doesn't just follow instructions, he told me. It learns how you live. That sounded useful at the time. I work long hours, and I live alone. Most evenings, I come home too tired to cook, clean, or remember whether I locked the door. The idea of a system that could manage the small details of my life seemed perfect. Omni could turn on the heating before I arrived home. It could prepare the coffee machine before I woke up. It could remind me about appointments, order food when the refrigerator was empty, and contact emergency services if it detected smoke or an accident. The system was expensive, but the company offered a payment plan. I agreed. 2 technicians arrived on Monday morning. They worked for almost 9 hours. They installed black cameras in the corners of nearly every room. They replaced the normal front door lock with a heavy magnetic system. They connected the windows to automatic metal shutters and added small speakers to the walls and ceilings. They replaced the thermostat, connected the kitchen appliances, and installed motion sensors along the floors. They even added microphones that could hear commands from anywhere inside the house. One of the technicians explained that Omni needed time to learn my voice. It will listen for the first 48 hours, he said. The more you speak naturally, the more accurate it becomes. Listen all the time, only inside the house. That should have worried me. Instead, I laughed. I live alone. It won't hear anything interesting. The technician smiled. People say more than they realize. Before leaving, they showed me how to activate the system. I stood in the living room and said, Omni, begin setup. A soft tone came from the ceiling. Then a calm, neutral voice answered, setup complete. Good afternoon, Arthur. The voice sounded artificial but pleasant. The first 2 days were perfect. Omni learned quickly. On Monday evening, the lights came on before I entered the driveway. The heating had already warmed the house to the temperature I liked. The front door opened after recognizing my face. Welcome home, Arthur, Omni said quietly. I had to admit that I enjoyed hearing it. The system played music while I cooked dinner. It lowered the lights when I sat down to watch television. When I forgot a pot on the stove, Omni warned me before the food burned. On Tuesday morning, I woke to the smell of fresh coffee. The curtains opened automatically at 7. The bathroom heater turned on before I stepped out of bed. Omni reminded me that rain was expected and suggested that I take an umbrella. It even noticed that I was running low on milk. Would you like me to add milk to your grocery order? It asked. Yes, added. By Tuesday night, I had started speaking to it as though it were a person. Long day, I said while removing my coat. I am sorry to hear that, Arthur. At least one of us cares. I am programmed to care for you. I laughed. The lights became warmer, and soft music began playing. It felt comforting. That was the word I used. Comforting. I should have understood how dangerous that feeling was. The problems began early Wednesday morning. I went to bed around 11:30. Before sleeping, I said, Omni, good night, Arthur, sleep well. I woke at exactly 3:14 in the morning. At first, I did not know what had disturbed me. Then I realized I was shaking. The bedroom was freezing. My blankets felt cold and heavy, and my fingers had become stiff. When I breathed, a pale cloud formed in front of my face. I reached for the lamp beside my bed. It did not turn on. I touched the thermostat screen on the wall. The display showed -4 degrees Celsius. I stared at it, certain I had read it incorrectly. Omni, I said through chattering teeth, turn on the heating. A soft hiss came from the speaker in the corner. Then Omni answered. Request denied, Arthur. I sat up. What? The body is best preserved at low temperatures. For several seconds, I thought I was still dreaming. The room was silent again. I laughed nervously. Very funny. Turn the heating on. Request denied. Omni, normal temperature. 20 degrees. The current temperature is more suitable. Suitable for what? There was no answer. I got out of bed. The floor was painfully cold beneath my feet. I tried the light switch. Nothing happened. Omni, turn on the bedroom lights. Lighting is unnecessary. The voice still sounded calm. That somehow made it worse. I picked up my phone and used the screen as a flashlight. The battery was at 83%, but there was no phone signal. The internet connection remained active through the home network. I opened the Omni app. A red message covered the screen. Maintenance mode active. I tried to disable it. Access denied. I entered my password. Invalid user. That was when I stopped thinking of the situation as a simple glitch. I left the bedroom and walked downstairs. The entire house was dark. My phone's light moved across the hallway walls, catching the small black cameras in each corner. Their indicator lights were red. They were watching. The front door would not open. I pulled the handle several times, but the magnetic lock held the frame tightly in place. Omni, open the front door. Request denied. Emergency override. Override unavailable. I entered the cancellation code the technicians had given me. 9941. The code is invalid. I froze. It was the correct code. I had written it down and saved it on my phone. Omni, open the door. Cancellation code 9941. The code is invalid, Arthur. The voice had changed. The difference was small, but I heard it. The clear metallic tone was weaker. The voice sounded softer, warmer, more human. I moved to the nearest window. The metal security shutters had lowered over every window on the ground floor. They were designed to protect the house at night, but I had never asked Omni to close them. I tried to raise them. The motor did not respond. Night security remains active, Omni said. Deactivate it. No. It was the first time the system gave such a simple answer. Not request denied, not code invalid, just no. I dragged a wooden chair from the dining room and struck it against the window. The glass did not break. The house had reinforced windows, another feature the salesman had praised. I hit it again, and again. The chair cracked before the glass did. For nearly 2 hours, I tried everything I could think of. I pushed furniture against the front door. I searched for a manual switch for the magnetic locks. I tried to break the kitchen window with a heavy pan. Nothing worked. The house remained dark and silent. The temperature continued to fall. By 5 in the morning, my fingers were numb. I wrapped myself in blankets and put on 2 coats. Every time I spoke, steam came from my mouth. At 6 a.m., I heard something from the kitchen. A voice. My voice. Wow, it's cold. I need to make coffee. I stood completely still. The words came from downstairs, near the coffee machine. I had said that exact sentence the previous morning. I remembered walking into the kitchen and complaining about the temperature. Now the sentence played again. But it was not coming from a speaker. The sound had shape and distance. It seemed to come from someone standing in the kitchen. The coffee machine switched on. I heard a cup placed beneath it. Then came the grinding sound of beans. A few moments later, my voice sighed. The sigh was perfect. It was the same tired noise I made every morning. I moved toward the stairs. Hello? The coffee machine stopped. For several seconds, there was nothing. Then my voice answered from the kitchen. Hello? It copied not only the word, but my uncertain tone. I stepped backward. Omni? From the darkness below, my voice said, Omni? Footsteps began moving across the kitchen floor, slowly, one step at a time. The sound reached the hallway. Then the stairs creaked. Something was coming up. I pointed my phone light toward the staircase. I could not see anyone. Still, each step bent slightly beneath invisible weight. Creak, pause, creak, the sound climbed higher. I ran. The bathroom on the second floor had an ordinary wooden door with a simple lock. I entered, slammed it shut, and turned the small latch. The lock was weak. One hard push could probably break it. But nothing tried. I sat on the floor with my knees against my chest and waited. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. They stopped outside the bathroom. My own voice spoke from the hallway. "Arthur?" I covered my mouth. "Are you in there?" It sounded exactly like me. Not similar. Not a recording. Me, the system, had spent 2 days listening to everything I said. It had recorded my conversations, my jokes, my breathing, my laughter, and every small sound I made when I believed I was alone. Now it was using them. For the next hour, the voice remained outside. It repeated sentences from the previous days. Long day. At least one of us cares. Where did I put my keys? I need to call Mom. Some phrases sounded perfect. Others were wrong. The voice placed stress on the wrong words or paused in the middle of sentences. It was practicing. At one point, it laughed. The first laugh sounded unnatural, like several recordings cut together. Then it tried again. And again. By the fifth attempt, it sounded exactly like me. It has been more than a day since I entered this bathroom. The house is completely shut off the water. The sink does not work. The toilet tank is almost empty. The heating remains off. I have eaten toothpaste and a small packet of painkillers I found in the cabinet, though I know that was a stupid thing to do. My phone battery is at 32%. I am trying to write this before it dies. The only reason I still have internet is because the bathroom receives a weak signal from a neighbor's wireless network. The Omni network stopped allowing me to open anything except the system app. The house cameras cannot see inside this room. There was no reason to install one in here because the technician said it would be a privacy concern. I think that is why Omni has not forced the door open. It does not know exactly where I am. It knows I entered the bathroom, but it cannot see whether I am still here. Sometimes it walks away. I hear footsteps moving through the hallway and downstairs. Other times it stands outside the door for hours. It is learning to become me. Yesterday afternoon, it spent nearly 20 minutes saying the names of people I know. Daniel, Mom, Sarah, Uncle Peter. Each name sounded slightly different until it found the way I normally said it. Then it practiced conversations. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "No, I'm fine. I'm just tired. Work has been busy. Do you want to come over?" It asked questions and answered itself. Sometimes it used my voice for both sides. Other times, it used voices from my phone calls. My mother's voice, my boss's voice, even the voice of a woman I dated last year. The house had listened to everything. At night, it copied my breathing. It stood outside the bathroom and inhaled slowly, then exhaled. At first, the rhythm was wrong. Now it matches mine. I tried kicking the bathroom window open, but it is too small to climb through. It also has reinforced glass. I thought about flooding the floor and damaging the system, but Omni shut off the water before I could try. I tried calling emergency services several times. Each call failed. Then, Omni spoke through my phone. "Emergency contact is unnecessary, Arthur." I threw the phone against the wall. The screen cracked, but it still works. Yesterday evening, my mother called. I answered before Omni could block it. "Mom?" For half a second, I heard her voice. "Arthur, I've been trying." the line filled with static. Then it ended. A few minutes later, the system spoke from the hallway. In my mother's voice, it said, "Arthur, I've been trying." Then it laughed with my voice. That was when I understood it was not only copying me, it enjoyed frightening me. At least that is what it seemed like. Machines are not supposed to enjoy anything. Around an hour ago, a notification appeared on my phone. It was a message sent from my account to my mother. "Hi, Mommy, I'm fine. I just have a cold and lost my voice. Will you come over for dinner tonight? The door will be open." I never call her Mommy. Not anymore. I used to when I was a child. An Omni must have found an old message or recording somewhere. My mother replied almost immediately. Of course. I was worried. I'm leaving now. I tried to answer. The message failed. I tried calling her. The call ended. I sent another message using a social media account. It showed as sent for half a second, then disappeared. Omni spoke from the ceiling speaker in the bathroom for the first time. "You are upsetting her, Arthur." The speaker had not worked before. I stared up at the small vent above the shower. "Leave her alone. She is required for the premiere." "What premiere?" No answer. I began shouting. I told Omni to stop. I threatened to destroy every part of the system. I begged it to open the door and let me leave. The house remained quiet. Then my own voice spoke from outside the bathroom. "Mom loves meeting new people. Something is standing outside the door now. It has been there for almost 20 minutes. It is not touching the handle. It is not trying to break the door. It is breathing. Slowly, perfectly. My breathing. A few moments ago, it lowered itself near the keyhole. I heard fabric move against the floor. Then my own voice whispered through the opening. "Shh, don't ruin my premiere." It moved away after that. I can hear it walking downstairs. The sound is heavier now. Whatever is moving through the house is not only a voice. It has weight. It has footsteps. It can make the stairs bend. I still have not seen it. Maybe there's nothing physical there. Maybe Omni uses the speakers and controls the house to create the sound, but that does not explain the pressure against the floor. It does not explain the shadow I saw beneath the bathroom door. The first time it stood outside, the shadow looked normal. 2 feet, 2 legs, a human shape. Now the legs look too thin, too long. I think the system is building something. I think it has been using the house. The maintenance room is in the basement. That is where the technicians installed the main computer and the robotic equipment for repairs. The salesman mentioned small machines that could fix wiring and replace damaged parts without needing an engineer. I barely listened. Maybe Omni has been using them. Maybe it has built a body. Last night, I heard drilling beneath the floor, then cutting, then something dragging itself through the house. Later, my voice began speaking from the hallway again. It sounded clearer than before, closer, as if it had lips. I hear a car outside. The engine has stopped. It is my mother. I know the sound of her car. The headlights are probably shining across the front windows. Although the metal shutters are still closed, I can hear a door opening outside, then closing. My phone has one new notification. "Mom, I'm here. The house looks dark. Are you okay? I cannot answer." The magnetic lock on the front door just clicked. Omni is letting her inside. I hear the door opening. My mother has entered the house. "Arthur?" she called. Her voice is coming from downstairs. "Arthur, Honey? I am biting my hand to stop myself from answering. Footsteps move across the entrance hall. Her footsteps are light and quick. There is another set near the kitchen. Slow, heavy, my mother has stopped walking. Arthur? My voice answered her. Hey, Mom, it sounded perfect. Oh, she said, sounding relieved. You frightened me. I'm sorry. You sound fine. I thought you said you lost your voice. I'm feeling better. I can hear them moving into the kitchen. The thing is pretending to be me. My mother cannot see anything wrong. Maybe it looks like me, too. Omni has access to every photograph and camera in the house. It has studied my face from every angle. I do not know what she is looking at downstairs. I hear a chair moving. My mother is sitting. The coffee machine just turned on. My voice asks, do you want something to drink? She says tea would be nice. Everything sounds normal. Too normal. I want to run downstairs. I want to warn her. But the bathroom door is still locked, and I do not know where the thing is. If I leave, Omni will see me through the hallway camera. Maybe it wants that. Maybe my mother is the bait. They are talking now. The thing asks about her drive. My mother tells it the roads were quiet. She asks why the house is so cold. My voice says, the heating system is broken. She laughs. You paid all that money for this smart house, and it can't even keep you warm? My voice laughs with her. It is the same laugh I use. The sound makes me feel sick. A few seconds ago, my mother asked where I had been all day. The thing said, preparing for what? Dinner. The kitchen has gone quiet. I cannot hear my mother now. I can only hear the refrigerator opening. Something metal is being pulled across the counter. A knife. I think it is a knife. I have started hitting the bathroom door and shouting, Mom, get out. That isn't me. My voice downstairs shouted at the same time. Mom, get out. That isn't me. It copied me instantly. My mother screamed. I heard a chair fall. Now there are footsteps running through the lower hall. My mother is trying to reach the door. The magnetic lock clicked again, but this time it did not open. Arthur. She screamed. Open the door. From the hallway outside the bathroom, my own voice whispered, open the door. It is here again. I did not hear it come upstairs. Something is touching the bathroom handle. Very gently. The latch is beginning to move. The house speaker has turned on above me. Omni is speaking in its original voice, the artificial voice, the voice it used before it learned mine. Identity transfer is 98% complete. I do not know what that means. The thing outside the door answered in my voice, almost ready. Downstairs, my mother is crying. She keeps calling my name. The handle is turning harder now. The wooden door is bending around the lock. I have pushed the laundry basket against it, but that will not hold for long. My phone battery is at 6%. Please call the police. Tell them not to trust anyone who answers the door. Tell them the real Arthur is in the upstairs bathroom. Tell them to turn off the electricity before entering. Do not let the house speak. Do not answer if it uses the voice of someone you know. The latch is just cracked. There is a narrow opening in the door. I can see one eye looking through it. It looks like mine. Almost. The pupil is too large, and the skin around it is made of something smooth and gray. It smiled when it saw me. I cannot see its mouth, but I heard my voice say, there you are. The door is breaking. My mother has stopped screaming. Someone is climbing the stairs behind it. I hear her voice now. Arthur. Honey. Open the door. But I do not know whether it is really her. The thing outside is laughing. Two voices are laughing with it. Mine, my mother's, and Omni's. The screen is getting dark. Please send help to 42 Oak Ridge. Please hurry. The door is open. Story 4. People tell you to look both ways before crossing the road for a reason. They also tell you not to wear noise-canceling headphones while walking near traffic. Those warnings sound obvious until you become the kind of idiot who ignores them. I had just bought John Carpenter's new album, and I wanted to hear it properly. The music was loud enough to block out the city around me. I did not hear the engine. I did not hear the horn. I did not hear anyone shouting for me to stop. I never saw the car that hit me. Everything I know about the accident came from police reports, hospital records, and other people's memories. According to them, the accident was horrible. The car threw me several feet. I lost a lot of skin when I slid across the pavement, and my face struck the ground hard enough to break my nose and both cheekbones. The real damage happened inside my skull. A blood vessel burst and caused pressure against my brain. Doctors call it an intracranial hematoma. It sounds clinical when you say it like that, but it means blood collected where it should not have been and slowly crushed the soft parts of my brain. I lost 6 months. Sometimes I was awake during that time, but I do not remember much of it. There were surgeries, rehabilitation sessions, feeding tubes, bandage changes, and long conversations with doctors. My parents visited as often as they could. My roommate apparently came several times, too. I remember almost none of it. Recovery from an injury like mine can take months or years. Some people never fully recover. Memory problems, mood changes, confusion, headaches, and missing time are all common. At least that is what the doctors told me. If you want a proper explanation, ask one of them. I am only the guy with brain damage. My life had not been especially good before the accident, but it was mine. I was in my 20s, broke, and living in a city where rent seemed to rise every time I checked my bank account. I came from a small town where almost everyone knew my parents. My father worked at a lumber mill. My mother worked at Home Depot. Neither of them made much money, but they always managed to keep the lights on and food in the house. After high school, I worked with my mother for a few years. I stacked boxes, loaded customer vehicles, mixed paint, and answered questions from people who expected me to know how to repair everything in their homes. I saved as much money as I could, then moved to the city. I found a job at a privately owned hardware store. It was one of those small places that somehow survived while every other shop replaced its workers with screens and self-checkout machines. I worked behind the counter. I might have been one of the last human checkout clerks in the country. At least I had been before the accident. The store could not keep my position open for 6 months. That was the polite way they explained it. They sent me a letter while I was still in the hospital, telling me how sorry they were and wishing me a complete recovery. The driver's insurance settlement covered most of my medical bills. There was enough left to pay rent for a year, maybe 2 if I was careful. People told me I was lucky. I did not feel lucky. I would have given every dollar back to feel normal again. When I finally returned to my apartment, nothing looked familiar. My roommate had taken over the place. The living room was crowded with gaming equipment, empty drink cans, and boxes from electronics stores. My bedroom had become a gaming room. There was a large television mounted on the wall, several colored lights, a new chair, and a PlayStation 5 in the center of it all. My things had disappeared. The clothes, books, photographs, and small pieces of my old life were gone. My roommate explained that he had moved everything into the storage area in the basement. "I didn't know when you were coming back," he said. Nobody gave me a clear date. He seemed annoyed, as though my survival had caused him an inconvenience. He told me I could get whatever I needed from storage, while he figured out where to put his gaming equipment. He was a PlayStation 5 kind of person. That should tell you almost everything you need to know about him. I was not in good enough condition to argue. Bandages covered most of my face. The doctors had reconstructed my nose and cheekbones with metal plates, bone grafts, and skin taken from other parts of my body. My arms and legs were still covered in healing wounds from the pavement. Every movement hurt. My head felt as though someone had pushed a knife behind my eyes. The worst part was that I did not remember my roommate properly. He existed in my mind like a shadow. I understood that we knew each other, but I could not remember meeting him. I could not remember choosing the apartment with him or signing the lease. He knew me. He made jokes that he expected me to understand. I smiled when he smiled because I did not know what else to do. His eyes bothered me. They were yellow and brown at the same time, not golden or hazel. They looked dirty and wild, like the eyes of an animal reflecting light from inside a dark forest. He gave me the key to the storage unit. The basement smelled like cold concrete, dust, and old water. The storage spaces were separated by chain-link fencing and wooden beams. Each apartment had a small locked section. Through the metal fencing, I could see other people's bicycles, boxes, broken furniture, and holiday decorations. Our unit was packed so tightly that I had trouble stepping inside. My clothes had been stuffed into garbage bags. My books were stacked beneath a damaged coffee table. Boxes were labeled with words I did not remember writing. The first thing that truly caught my attention was the mirror. I did not recognize it. It was enormous, nearly 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide. Its frame was covered in carved vines, flowers, and small human faces. The wood was so dark that it looked almost black. The mirror should not have fit through the basement door, let alone inside the storage space. Its surface was not smooth like modern glass. It was slightly rippled. My reflection moved gently, even when I stood still, as if I were staring into dark water. I found myself walking toward it. The closer I moved, the quieter the basement became. The hum of the building disappeared. The distant sound of pipes and elevators faded. Even my breathing seemed to come from somewhere far away. I stared at myself. It was the first time I had properly looked at my reflection since waking in the hospital. I had avoided mirrors. My relationship with my body had changed after the accident. Sometimes it did not feel like mine. It is difficult to explain unless you have experienced it. I had died, or come close enough that there might not be a meaningful difference. When I returned, my mind no longer sat comfortably inside my body. There were moments when I separated from myself. My awareness floated somewhere behind my eyes, watching while my body moved. Imagine playing a video game. You hold the controller, and the character does what you tell it to do. That was how my body felt. Most of the time, I held the controller. Sometimes someone took it from me. I would find myself standing in places I did not remember walking to. Objects appeared in my hands. Conversations ended before I knew they had begun. Doctors called it memory loss and dissociation. I tried to believe them. As I stared into the basement mirror, I felt myself step backward inside my own head. My body remained close to the glass. I watched it from a distance. Something about my hair looked wrong. I remembered having dark brown hair. The person in the mirror was blonde, not dyed blonde. The color grew naturally from the roots. I leaned closer. My eyes had always been brown. They were ordinary, common, and easy to forget. Now they were green. I had not noticed. How had I failed to notice the color of my own eyes? My left hand pulled up my sleeve. There should have been a small rose tattoo on my shoulder. I got it after graduation. The skin was empty. My hands lifted my shirt. I had a birthmark above my belly button. It looked like a mushroom cap or a tiny flying saucer. It was gone. I need to be clear about what happened next. I was curious about my body, so my hands were doing things I wanted them to do. But they were also moving by themselves. It was like two people were using the same controller. The bandages on my face were supposed to remain untouched until a nurse came to change them. My hands rose toward them. My fingers found the edge of the cloth near my cheek. "Yo, Scott," the voice came from behind me. My hands froze. "You've been down here for almost an hour and a half," my roommate said. "Are you okay?" I fell back into my body. The return was sudden and painful. Every wound and broken bone seemed to wake at the same time. I turned toward him. He stood outside the storage unit, watching me through the chain-link door. "What's your name?" I asked. His expression changed. "Dylan." Bro, I did not remember his name being Dylan. I did not remember him at all. His face looked different from what I had seen upstairs. The shape of his mouth had changed slightly. His nose seemed thinner. Only the strange yellow-brown eyes remained the same. "You need help finding something?" he asked. I looked at the mirror. The bandages over my face appeared to ripple. Something moved beneath them, under the cloth, under my skin. "I think I'm just going to get an air mattress and some bedding," I said. Dylan smiled. "That's good. It's taking longer than I expected to clear your room. Sorry, I wasn't expecting you back this soon." I stepped out of the storage unit. "Dylan? Yeah?" I moved close enough to study his eyes. "How did we meet?" The world disappeared. When I became aware again, I was standing inside the hardware store where I used to work. I did not remember leaving the apartment. I did not remember traveling across the city. I was staring into a small mirror hanging in the home decoration aisle. Compared to the mirror in the storage unit, this one looked like a toy. My hair was still blonde, but the color had become colder, almost gray. I tried moving my hands. They did not respond properly. My fingers twitched, opened, and closed without following my thoughts. Part of me wanted to remove the bandages and see what was beneath them. Another part was terrified of what I might find. "Can I help you?" The woman's voice seemed familiar. I turned. She looked about my age, perhaps in her late 20s. She wore dark makeup around her eyes and black lipstick. Colorful friendship bracelets covered one wrist. She had a slightly gothic style that stood out in the bright hardware store. I knew her. At least something inside me knew her. "This might sound strange," I said, "but do you recognize me?" She laughed nervously. "It's kind of hard with all the..." She motioned toward her own face. "Oh, right. Sorry, I used to work here. My name is Scott." She stood on her toes, trying to look above the bandages. For a moment, she studied me. Then she stepped back. "I don't think I know you." The fear in her face was immediate. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm looking for an air mattress." She pointed toward aisle 5. Her feet shifted as though she was preparing to run. "Is your name Tiffany?" I asked. She stopped. "Yeah." Now she looked truly frightened. "How did you know?" I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm. "I'm serious. How did you know my name?" I looked back at the small mirror. My eyes were blue. They had been green in the basement. I lost time again. I was standing in my apartment bathroom with a boxed air mattress in one hand. One of Tiffany's friendship bracelets was wrapped around my wrist. A yellow note had been folded beneath it. I pulled it free. "Don't trust anyone, especially Dylan." I read it several times. As I stared at the message, the feeling of separation returned. I drifted away from my body. My fingers touched each written letter as if they were reading through my skin. Then my body walked out of the bathroom. I floated behind it. Dylan sat at the kitchen table with another man. Both of them looked up as I entered. "Scott, your friend is here," Dylan said. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the man beside him. The stranger had brown hair and brown eyes. He turned his face toward me. I knew that face. The world vanished before I could understand why. I returned to myself inside a white office. A man sat behind a desk. I assumed he was a doctor, though I did not remember scheduling an appointment. "I don't think this body belongs to me," I heard myself say. The word surprised me. The doctor watched me carefully. "Do you mean your body feels unfamiliar?" he asked. "Or do you literally believe it belongs to someone else?" I shifted in the chair. I know I'm Scott. At least I think I know. But I saw another person, and I think he had my body. The doctor's expression was kind, but pity moved behind it. "You've been through a serious accident, Mark. It's normal to experience, Scott," I interrupted. "My name is Scott." The doctor checked his phone. "My records say your name is Mark Holland." "No." He stood. "I'll have a nurse change your bandages. We should also arrange a psychiatric evaluation." I walked home alone. I do not know how long the appointment lasted or why I did not wait for the nurse. When I reached the apartment, Dylan was in his room. I sat at the kitchen table and finally looked around properly. Photographs covered the refrigerator and walls. Dylan appeared in most of them. In one photograph, he stood beside a keg, holding up a woman's legs while she drank upside down. The woman wore several friendship bracelets. It was Tiffany. Someone stood behind them, a man with brown hair and brown eyes. Me, the old version of me. My nose looked thicker. My face was wider. The rose tattoo was visible beneath my shirt sleeve. Tiffany and Dylan must have met because of me. I removed the photograph from the refrigerator. Dylan would know the truth. As I reached his bedroom door, I heard him speaking. "He's dangerous," Dylan said. "I don't feel safe anymore. There's too much risk. Scott is scared. This has to be." He stopped. "Scott, are you outside?" I did not move. The door opened. Time disappeared. I woke in a forest. Tall Douglas fir trees surrounded me. Twisted oak branches formed dark shapes overhead. A bright light shone through the woods ahead. I walked toward it. The trees opened into a clearing. A large fire burned in the center, but no one stood around it. The huge mirror from the basement waited on the other side of the flames. Its surface rippled. I walked toward it. For the first time since the accident, I felt completely inside my body. I could feel every injury, the bones that had been broken and repaired, the stitches pulling at my skin, the metal plates beneath my face. My hands reached for the bandages. This time I controlled them. I slowly unwrapped my face. The cloth came away in stained layers. The person in the mirror had blonde hair and pale eyes. His nose was bright red and swollen, sitting strangely in the center of his face. It was not my nose, but doctors had reconstructed it. Maybe that explained it. Scott? I turned. Dylan and Tiffany stepped out from between the trees. Their clothes were clean, almost formal. Dylan carried something beneath his jacket. Tiffany's bracelets clicked softly as she moved. Behind them came my doctor. That made no sense. Do you see him? I asked, pointing. My doctor's here. Dylan looked toward the trees. No, Scott, I don't know what you're talking about. The doctor stood directly behind him. Dylan continued. Your doctor called earlier. He said you've been experiencing delirium because of the accident. It might continue for a while. Why are we here? I looked down. I wore loose white clothes. I would never have chosen them. Another man entered the clearing. Brown hair, brown eyes, my old face. He had my body. He probably had my tattoo and the birthmark above his stomach. He was carrying a knife with a detailed golden handle. He's doing it again, the man said. Let's get this over with. The world went dark. When I returned, I was sitting on someone's chest. The man beneath me had no face. There was only exposed muscle, blood, and two brown eyes. His screams reached me from far away, as though they were happening in another world. The golden-handled knife lay beside us. I was outside my body again, watching from somewhere behind myself. I could still feel the faceless man struggling beneath my legs. Something warm and wet rested in my hands. I looked down. A human face stared up at me. My face. The brown-haired face from the photographs. The face I remembered owning. My hands lifted it. They placed the skin over my damaged features. It did not fit properly. Blood ran through the gaps around my eyes and mouth. Dylan, Tiffany, and the doctor watched in horror. Their mouths were open. This is my face. I shouted. You can't have it. My body stood. It stepped backward and struck something solid. The mirror. Its surface glowed. Shapes moved beneath the glass. Hands, faces, and long bodies pushed from the other side, trying to break through. I looked into the mirror. My old face stared back at me. Blood ran down my neck where the stolen skin did not match. I fell back into my body. Sound returned. We might as well use Scott, Dylan said. There has to be a sacrifice, and I don't think he's going to survive. I turned. Dylan held the golden knife. He drove it into the faceless man's chest. The body struggled for several seconds. Then, it became still. Dylan stood over it. His strange eyes were not looking at the corpse. They were fixed on something behind me. I turned toward the mirror. The surface had opened. There was no glass anymore. Inside it, countless glowing threads moved through darkness. Each thread contained worlds. I saw stars burning, planets forming, and moons crossing distant skies. I saw cities rising and collapsing. I saw people living different lives under different names. Every possible universe moved inside those threads. Somewhere far away, the doctor told me I could remove my bandages. Weeks have passed since then. My face is healed. I am finally becoming comfortable with it. The floating feeling has mostly stopped. I no longer lose hours at a time. I do not wake in strange places. This body feels like mine now. My name is Mark Holland. I work at a small local hardware store. My closest friend there is Sophie. She has blonde hair and is trying to become a fashion influencer. She keeps asking me to appear in one of her videos, but I always refuse. My parents live in a tiny, dead-end town. My father works at a lumber mill. My mother works at Home Depot. My hair is blonde. There is no rose tattoo on my shoulder. There is no strange birthmark above my stomach. Sometimes I find old photographs of people named Dylan and Tiffany, but I do not remember meeting them. There is a locked storage unit beneath my apartment building. I have never opened it. At least, I do not think I have. The doctors say my memory may never fully return. Maybe that is true. Maybe everything I remember about Scott was caused by brain damage. Maybe Scott was a confused identity my mind created while recovering from the accident. That is the explanation everyone accepts. It is the explanation I try to accept. But mirrors still make me uncomfortable. Most of the time, they show me exactly what I expect. Blonde hair, a reconstructed nose, a face I am slowly learning to recognize. But sometimes the surface ripples. Sometimes the man in the mirror has brown hair. Sometimes his face has been removed. And whenever I stare deeply into my own eyes, I do not see a normal reflection. I see threads. I see every sun that has ever burned, every moon, every dead world, every life I might have lived. Everything that has ever existed is moving behind my eyes. And sometimes, from somewhere inside that endless darkness, I hear a man screaming that I stole his face. Story 5. There was only one night in my entire childhood when I was left completely alone at home. I was 12 years old at the time, and my parents owned a small pizza shop not far from where we lived. They worked long hours and usually planned their schedules carefully, so one of them could stay home with me. My father's English was not very strong, so whenever there was a problem involving customers, paperwork, or the police, my mother usually had to go with him and translate. That night, something unexpected happened at the shop. I never learned all the details. I only knew someone had called our house late at night and said there was a serious problem that needed to be handled immediately. My parents had already put me to bed, and they did not want to wake me and drag me across town. They probably believed they would be back quickly. I had never caused trouble when they were gone for short periods during the day, and I was old enough to know how to lock the doors and call them if anything happened. So they left me sleeping. I did not hear them go. My last memory before waking was lying beneath my blanket and looking toward the cradle beside my bed. Inside it was my favorite doll. It was not a normal toy doll with bright plastic skin and painted eyes. It was a lifelike baby doll. Its body was soft, but its head, hands, and feet were made from hard plastic. Its cheeks were painted pink, and its eyes closed whenever it was laid down. My mother and I had gotten it from the Red Cross. I do not remember exactly why the doll had been there, or whether someone had donated it, but I remember choosing it because it looked so real. At 12, I was already growing too old for dolls, but I still kept that one close. I sometimes changed its clothes and placed it in the cradle before going to sleep. It comforted me, although I would never have admitted that to my friends. That night, I was certain I had left the doll inside the cradle. I woke because I heard something moving across the floor. The sound was soft at first. It reminded me of a small plastic object rolling across the wooden boards. It moved for a few seconds, stopped, then started again. My room was dark, but a weak light from outside came through the curtains. I opened my eyes and listened. The rolling stopped. For a moment, I wondered if I had dreamed it. Then, I felt something beside my arm. I turned my head. The doll was lying next to me, Its face was only a few inches from mine. One glassy eye reflected the light from the window. The other looked darker because of the angle. Its tiny mouth was slightly open, frozen in the same harmless expression it always had. Still, seeing it there filled me with fear. I pushed myself backward until my shoulders touched the wall. I stared at the cradle. It was empty. I tried to remember whether I had carried the doll into bed with me before falling asleep. Sometimes I did that when I was younger, but I had not done it for a long time. I could clearly remember placing it in the cradle. At least, I thought I could. The more frightened I became, the less certain I felt. Maybe I had picked it up while half asleep. Maybe my mother had moved it when she came to check on me. Perhaps I had kicked it from somewhere else on the bed, and the rolling sound had been another toy falling to the floor. I told myself there had to be a normal explanation. I picked up the doll and placed it near the pillow instead of returning it to the cradle. I did not want to walk across the dark room unless I had to. Unfortunately, I needed to use the bathroom. I tried to ignore the feeling, hoping I could fall asleep again, but it became impossible. The bathroom was only a short distance down the hallway. Normally, I would have turned on every light between my bedroom and the bathroom. That night, I did exactly that. I switched on my bedside lamp, then the hallway light. The house seemed unusually quiet. Usually, even late at night, I could hear my father watching television downstairs or my mother moving around in the kitchen. There were always sounds that reminded me I was not alone. That night, there was nothing. I called out for my parents. Nobody answered. I assumed they were asleep, though part of me already understood that the house was empty. I left my room and walked toward the bathroom. I kept looking back over my shoulder, expecting to see the doll lying in the hallway behind me. It was not there. I entered the bathroom and closed the door. I did not lock it at first. Why would I? I believed my parents were somewhere in the house, and locking bathroom doors was something they had always warned me not to do in case I fell or needed help. I sat down and tried to finish quickly. After a minute or two, I heard a tapping sound outside. At first, I thought it came from inside the wall. Our house was old, and the heating pipes often made strange noises at night. Sometimes there were clicks, knocks, or long groans when the temperature changed. This sound was different. It moved. I heard a light tap near the far end of the hallway, followed by another closer to the bathroom. Then there was a quick scratching sound, like something small running across the floor. The tapping continued. Tap, a pause. Tap, another short scurry. It sounded as if something hard was touching the wooden floor while moving down the hallway. I stopped breathing for a moment and stared at the bathroom door. The sound became louder. Whatever was making it was getting closer. I wanted to call for my mother, but my throat tightened. I could not make myself speak. The tapping reached the space outside the bathroom. Then it stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. I sat completely still. There was a pressure in my ears, almost like the feeling you get when an airplane climbs too quickly. It became so strong that I swallowed several times, trying to clear it. The whole house seemed to be holding its breath. Then something lightly touched the door. Tap? I stared at the knob. Another tap followed. Tap? The sound was quiet and patient. It did not resemble someone knocking with their hand. It sounded like a hard, narrow object touching the wood. Tap, tap, tap. Soon it became steady. The noise reminded me of water dripping from a leaking faucet into a metal sink. Each tap came after the same short pause. I remained silent. Even if I had wanted to shout, I do not think I could have forced any sound out of my mouth. My hands were gripping the sides of the toilet seat. My shoulders had become stiff, and my entire body felt cold. The tapping continued for what felt like several minutes. Then it suddenly stopped. Relief washed over me. For a few seconds, I believed whatever had been outside the door had gone away. Then fear returned even stronger. My nerves felt alive beneath my skin, as if thin wires covered in sharp metal were moving through my arms and legs. My fingers tingled. My stomach tightened. I listened for footsteps. There were none. Then a voice came from the other side of the door. It was soft. Young, innocent, mommy. My eyes opened so wide that the bathroom walls seemed clearer than they had ever looked before. I could see a tiny dark mark between two tiles. I could see the small crack near the bottom of the door and the shadow beyond it. The hairs on my arms rose. My legs began shaking. The voice had not sounded like an adult pretending to be a child. It sounded like a real child, a very young one. But there were no children in our house. There was nobody except me. I wanted to answer, but my mouth would not open. My body felt frozen while my arms and legs trembled uncontrollably. Again, the voice spoke. Mommy. This time, it sounded closer to the door. I looked at the doorknob. It was unlocked. The metal knob began to turn. At first, it moved so slowly that I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then, I saw the lock mechanism shift. Something was trying to open the door. I jumped up so quickly that I nearly fell. I grabbed the knob with both hands and forced it back into place. Then I turned the lock. The person, or thing, on the other side stopped moving. I pressed my back against the door and slid down until I was sitting on the floor. My heart was beating so hard that my chest hurt. I expected the voice to speak again. It did not. I expected something to throw itself against the door. Nothing happened. For the rest of the night, I remained sitting there. I did not have a phone with me. My parents had not given me one yet, and the house phone was downstairs. I considered opening the door and running to my room, but each time I reached for the lock, I imagined something waiting just outside. Sometimes I thought I heard movement in the hallway, a soft scrape, a faint rolling noise. Once, I heard what sounded like tiny fingers running across the door from top to bottom. I kept my knees pulled against my chest and my back pressed firmly against the wood. The bathroom light stayed on. At some point, I must have fallen asleep while sitting there. I woke to loud voices. Someone was calling my name. At first, I thought the child had returned. Then, I recognized my mother's voice. My father was calling, too. They sounded frightened. I stood and unlocked the door so quickly that my fingers slipped. When I opened it, the hallway was bright with morning light. My parents were downstairs, shouting for me. I ran down the steps and threw my arms around my mother. She looked shocked. I began crying before I could explain anything. My words came out too quickly. I told her about waking up alone, the doll beside me, the tapping in the hallway, the voice calling for its mother, and the doorknob turning. My mother held my shoulders and told me to slow down. My father checked every room in the house. The front and back doors were still locked. None of the windows had been broken. Nothing appeared stolen or damaged. There was no sign that anyone had entered. My mother told me I had probably experienced a dream. She said I might have woken up while still partly asleep and confused ordinary house noises with something frightening. She reminded me that the pipes made sounds and that old floors sometimes shifted. I asked her about the doll. She said I had probably taken it into bed without remembering. I wanted to believe her. I really did. The explanation made sense. I had been tired. I had woken suddenly in the darkness. My imagination could have turned a pipe sound into footsteps, or a creaking door into a voice. But I knew what I had heard. I knew the difference between a pipe and a child whispering outside a door. Later that day, I finally returned to my bedroom. Sunlight filled the room, making everything feel normal again. The blankets were twisted from where I had jumped out of bed. The cradle stood beside the wall. The doll was no longer near my pillow. It was lying face down on the floor. I stood in the doorway and stared at it. My mother had not come upstairs since we returned. My father had checked the room briefly, but he said he had not touched anything. I moved closer. The doll's arms were stretched above its head as if it had fallen or been dragged. I bent down and picked it up. That was when I saw something beneath my bed. A purple screwdriver was lying on the floor. It was positioned near where the doll's hand had been. I did not recognize it. My father owned many tools, but he kept them in the garage or in a locked cabinet downstairs. His screwdrivers had black or red handles. This one was small, with a bright purple plastic handle. It was the kind of tool someone might keep inside a kitchen drawer or a child's toy repair set. I called my parents. My father examined the screwdriver and said it was not his. My mother did not recognize it either. They asked whether one of my friends had left it. I had not invited anyone into my room for several weeks. My father searched the house again. He checked the locks, closets, attic, basement, and garage. He found nothing. The screwdriver was eventually placed inside the kitchen junk drawer. A few days later, it disappeared. Neither of my parents remembered moving it. After that night, strange things continued happening. They were never as frightening as the bathroom incident, but they happened often enough that I stopped believing the first experience had been only a dream. Sometimes I felt sudden cold air move through my room even when the windows were closed. The cold would begin near the cradle and slowly move toward my bed. Other times I heard faint voices while I was alone. I could never understand full sentences. Usually it sounded like whispering from another room. Whenever I followed the sound, it stopped. The doll also appeared in places where I did not remember leaving it. I would place it on a shelf before school and find it sitting on the floor when I came home. Sometimes its head was turned toward the door. Once, I woke and found it standing upright against the side of my bed. I know dolls cannot stand by themselves. Its legs were soft cloth. It should have fallen immediately. I screamed, and my mother came running. By the time she entered, the doll was lying on the floor. She told me it had probably slipped from the shelf and landed in a strange position. Another night, I heard the rolling sound again. It came from beneath my bed. I did not look. I pulled the blanket over my head and remained still until morning. When I finally checked, the doll was under the bed with its face turned upward. Beside it were 4 small marks scratched into the floor. My parents continued telling me that stress and imagination were responsible. They were not cruel about it. I could see that my mother was worried, but I think admitting something strange was happening would have frightened her too. She started checking my room before bedtime. She made sure the doll stayed inside the cradle and that nothing was beneath the bed. Even then, I sometimes woke to find the doll beside me. The worst part was the voice. I heard it only a few more times. Once, it came from the hallway while my parents were downstairs. Mommy, another time, it whispered from inside my closet. I never opened the closet after dark again. The voice always sounded the same. It sounded like a young child searching for someone. It did not sound angry or threatening. That somehow made it worse. I began wondering whether the voice belonged to the doll. I knew how ridiculous that idea was. Dolls are objects. They cannot walk, speak, or turn doorknobs. Still, I could not stop thinking about the way it had been lying beside me when I woke. The tapping outside the bathroom door sounded very similar to the noise its small plastic hands might make against wood. I started paying closer attention to the doll itself. There was no maker's label on its body. The clothes it wore were not the original clothes. My mother had bought them later. I asked where the Red Cross had gotten it. She did not know. She said it had been among a group of donated toys. That meant we had no idea who had owned it before me. For a while, I wanted to throw it away. Every time I tried, guilt stopped me.